files for this week. So go ahead and just please download the week. Come on, computer. The week 2 start files. I'll download the completed files as well. But they're both available. So go ahead and download the start files. Go ahead and take a look at it. There's also a PDF file here for the future, so you can go in and kind of review what we went through in class. There's some reading material for Premiere Pro that we'll talk about later. We'll talk about filming resources and all this jazz later in the class. But for now, we're just going to start with the InDesign stuff. So if you take a look at the files that you downloaded, where did they go? Where did I put them? For some reason, everything's downloading to the desktop lately, which is just totally fun. Lots of crap on my desktop. Still downloading. It's going to take a few minutes. I think it's pretty big. Okay. Let's see. Are you done downloading yet? Yay! Start files. Here we go. Just make sure you jump in. So as you see, the start files are actually just 4 different images that I put together here. So something we can use when we go ahead and get started in InDesign. Awesome. Okay, see if my InDesign's up to date. Yeah, we're good to go. We can open it now. Come on. InDesign, open up. There we go. None of these Adobe applications are quick. Awesome. So as you notice, when you jump yourself into InDesign, you'll notice the first thing is just like every other application in Adobe is you get this little intro thing, and there's tutorials under the Learn tab. So there's all that kind of familiarity. But at the end of the day, what we're going to do is, as always, we're going to just click the new file button and get started. Okay, I think I have everything good to go. So what we're going to be making in InDesign, I'll actually show you that really quickly, what we're going to be making in InDesign today.
Chris, sorry to interrupt. Do we need to have InDesign open for class today?
You don't have to. You can follow along later. I am recording this.
Okay. This takes a really long time for me to load anything through Splashtop, like half an hour.
Yeah, if your internet's not very good, unfortunately, it's your best bet's always going to be coming in.
Yeah.
To the classroom. That's what we're going to put together. Not something not too exciting. We're going to talk a little about frames. We're going to drop some text in, and we're going to go ahead and format some images, do some cropping and stuff, and go ahead and take a look at this. And then we're gonna kind of learn the platform a little bit and how everything's laid out and stuff. But this is essentially what we're going to be creating. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click that new file button, as I said. There's actually a predefined one under print. So go ahead and click print at the top and then letter. Now, you'll see everything is done in picas. We're definitely going to want to switch things over to inches just because people talk in inches instead. If you're working with anything in the North American paper market, we do everything in inches. So everything is based on inches. If you work in European style, then you're going to look at like A1, A2, A3, A4. Those are all going to be done in centimeters or millimeters. So we're just going to do 8.5 by 11. One of the things we're going to want to set up, and what I talked about last week a little bit in the print industry, is what's known as a bleed. And that's the ability to be able to print. Let's see if I have anything here. Even this book. So, for example, if I wanted to design here, Anthony Bourdain. Perfect. That was really loud. So I have an Anthony Bourdain book here. Fantastic fantastic chef. There's a great picture on the back here of him. Actually, yeah, this is his Appetites cookbook. Anyway, this is actually my wife's book. But as you can see, the back here, make sure that my camera's working. Everything is so weird today. There we go. So you see one of the things that happens with this book is you see how the ink is going right to the edge. So we talked about bleeds a little bit last week, and what I meant by bleeds was in order for this to happen in any sort of printing scenario, actually as you can see too, actually the color of this, the print of this actually goes around the back. Do you see how that goes around the back? All around this edge here because they've wrapped it around. So I mean that's like it's like a literal version of a bleed, but how bleeds work is that when you're actually designing this, say you're designing this in InDesign, which would be a perfect opportunity to do that, you're going to go ahead and make sure that this image is actually going to be past the edge here quite a bit. And not just so you can wrap it around, but because so the printer can actually get ink to the side. It's then going to be printed on a larger piece of media, in this case, kind of this textured piece of paper, this paper stock that's a bit textured. You're going to go ahead and actually print over the edge of that, past the dimensions of it on a larger piece of paper, and then you're going to cut that paper down to the size that you need. And in this case, then you're also going to wrap it around the book, but that's not neither here nor there. But if I go inside this book, there's also some full printed spreads here. And the same thing for this. Of course, we're not doing a wraparound on this, but we are, again, same thing. This would be printed on a larger piece of paper. It would be larger than 8.5 by 11 or whatever the size of this is. And you would have a bleed area all along the outside, and you actually bring your artwork to that. You bring the images, all the color and everything like that to that bleed area, and then it would be printed and then cut down to size that it would actually be the correct size. And then, of course, it's book, so it would be bound to a book. But the example of a book just being like, because I have something here that has, full color all the way to the edge. That's how you print commercially. That's how any sort of commercial printer, you're going to print past the edge, not past the physical edge of the paper, of course, but you're going to use a larger piece of paper and print past the dimensions, the final dimensions that you want, and then you're going to cut down to final dimensions. So with that said, those are called bleeds. You can set those up in InDesign. You can set those up in Illustrator. Both of those applications are designed from the ground up to be able to handle bleeds. InDesign, of course, being more of a composition application, a layout application. Of course, it's going to be a lot more at home with that. So the bleed area is, in this case, an inch requirement going all the way around. And the industry standard is a 1/8 of an inch. Up to a 1/4 of an inch, just depending on the size, depending on the printer preferences, that kind of stuff. So an 1/8 of an inch would just be 0.125, or you can do 0.25 inches. That's fine too. So we'll do a bigger bleed today. We'll do 0.25 inches or 1/4 of an inch. The slug is not needed in this case. If I click preview, of course, it'll give me a preview of what the final document will look like. Just clicking this little checkbox here, so it's pretty nice. But the slug would be like an additional area, but we do not need a slug here in this case. The margins, of course, is just really for you, how you want to get to the edge, how close you want to get to the edge. If you want to set up some margins from the get-go to kind of give yourself a place to line things up to. Those are the lines on the inside. So the bleeds are these red lines, as you can see. Kind of move them, right? You can see even it locks into that 1/8 of an inch and then 1/4 of an inch. The margins are that kind of purpley pink line. I can bring those all the way down to 0 inches if I want to. Or again, it's just something you can use to kind of lay your content out. If you think about a book again, textbook, any kind of book, you're going to see pretty big margins for the most part, because you do have, I don't know if you can see that okay, but you do have kind of a space in the middle that you have to compensate for. If you're going to look at something like a letterhead or something like that, again, same thing. You're going to get a pretty decent, I don't know if I have anything here. You're going to get a pretty decently sized margin as well, just to give you that kind of buffer around the side. So it's funny because the application actually starts at 1/2 of an inch all the way around, but 1/2 of an inch is actually pretty tiny. So you could actually go up a little bit in that, probably up to 3/4 of an inch. 0.75 inches would also work, but it's up to you. If I go ahead and click create, InDesign's going to hit again, of course, just give me that blank slate, and we're jumping in right away. So one of the things you'll notice in InDesign right away is you don't see a layers panel. So it's not like Photoshop. So if you're familiar with Photoshop and you're dealing with layers all the time, there are the ability to look at layers in InDesign, of course, but it's really a different style of application. So you don't have to deal with layers as much. You're not thinking about it in that way. You're really thinking about composition. You're really thinking about layout. The properties pane, they've really redesigned a lot of the Adobe applications now to try to come up with a more standard layout. So you're going to see this kind of the mega properties pane, which is new on the side here. Older kind of classic layout. If I come down here, see this little button. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to click that. You see this little button here? It says Essentials. These are my different workspaces. So these are predefined by InDesign, by Adobe, and you can make your own, which is cool. You can also edit them. As you edit them, it'll actually save it as a preference to your preferences file on your computer. So next time you go ahead and open InDesign, these will all be changed. So for example, if you go ahead and start docking other widgets and panels, they call them panels. You start docking other panels over here, it'll actually save that to your preferences, so that next time you open the application, that's what it'll look like. And of course, you can go ahead and click Reset Essentials just to kind of go right back to the basics at any time if you need to. It's just that Reset Essentials button. If I go to Essentials Classic, this is kind of what things used to look like in Adobe applications. So this, a lot of times, for example, I'm more comfortable with the older layouts, but I'm learning the newer layouts because it is the future. But I'm definitely more comfortable with this because it was been like this for like 10 years, right? So, but this is the main properties pane was always at the top. Tools were always on the left, which that hasn't changed. And on the right is all of your docked. So everything that you need to do what you need to do is going to be docked on the right in panels. Okay. And of course, these are all editable. CC libraries is something, this is called Creative Cloud Libraries. This is the ability of using the cloud to go ahead and save different things. Colors, if you're working with a specific brand, you got logos and colors and stock photography that you use for that brand all the time. You can actually save it to your Creative Cloud library. You can create a library. In fact, I got the Sprout library here. And this is the library we use at work. So here's a Sprout logo. Here's a Sprout icon. Here's all the different colors that we might be using throughout for different artwork and things like that we're doing. And this is cool because this is shared with the entire team. So I didn't even create most of this. It's actually shared with the entire team, which is cool. These creative libraries are really, really neat. I don't think what I have in my library. Yeah, I just got a bunch of junk here that I've used in the past in my library. But these are really neat. You can create new libraries. You can share them in your organization, and they're super cool that way. So anyway, those are called CC libraries. Let's jump on back to just the essentials here. So the document window in the middle here, this is this little tab that you see up here. This is just like Photoshop or Illustrator. It's all the same. This is the current document that I'm looking at. You can see here it says Entitled 1. It's at 80%. It also says it has a GPU preview. This is your GPU. It's not going to be a test or anything, but GPU stands for graphics processing unit. So that's your graphics card. So because it's detected that this computer has a GPU, like a more dedicated GPU or a more powerful GPU, it's going to go ahead and automatically optimize the application. InDesign is intensive, kind of like Premiere Pro can be, right? Because sometimes you're bringing in, a couple 100 MB images, depending on the artwork you're doing, you're bringing in, 1,000-page documents, and it has a lot of optimization, automatic optimization that can happen. So that'll work on a variety of hardware. So if you have older, what that translates to, without getting too technical, if you have older hardware, if you have older computer, an older laptop, you should still be able to edit in InDesign. Just your preview might be a little lower quality because it's going to drop the quality on the preview. But you don't have to fret. It's still going to look really good once you print it. It won't be a problem. It's just a preview thing. So we will definitely see that today as I start throwing graphics in here. I'll kind of show you a preview of how InDesign can optimize the view, the preview, in order for your computer to be able to handle it better. So that's definitely a big part of it. If you have multiple documents open, they're going to be little tabs at the top. So for example, if I wanted to open up the flyer example, the finished one, it'll actually open it up. Just ignore all those tabs, those pop-ups. I'll explain all that in a second. Those little dialogues that you saw. But here are the two different documents that I have. So it'll actually open that up in a separate document at the top, and you can go back and forth. So it's really handy because you can even put them beside each other. Yeah, there we go. So you can actually put them beside each other, so you can copy things between the two documents. You can just grab that header. You can actually drag it around, right? Which is super, super nice. Okay, so the menu bar at the very top, if you're on Mac, it's going to be up here. If you're on Windows, it's going to be in this area here. This is going to be your file, your edit, and all your advanced features, right? Like just like any application whatsoever. The toolbox on the left here is going to contain all your tools for creating and editing artwork. There's 2 mice in both InDesign and Illustrator. There's 2 mouse cursors or selection tools. There's what's known as the selection tool, and there's one is known as the direct selection tool. There's actually a big difference between both of them. The selection tool is great. You're going to select groups of objects. You're going to select an entire object, right? The direct selection tool will actually allow you to get more granular and check like the different points. If it's a square or a box, some sort of vector artwork in InDesign, you're actually going to be able to collect the edges of that and adjust everything in the handles, if it were. And we'll talk about all that and we'll learn about that. But the understanding the difference between those 2 is very key. It's these 2 on here. The top one is always the selection tool. It's the default one. If you just simply even hit escape on your keyboard, it's going to go back to it. But the normal shortcut is V on the keyboard. So if you just click V, it's going to go to it. The direct selection tool's shortcut is A. And you can actually toggle between using the keyboard between those 2. You always know as well that the direct selection tool is filled in black. Sorry, the selection tool is filled in black, and the direct selection tool is actually filled in white. So they've tried to make it a little bit more obvious to people on what that's going to look like. The other tools that you're going to see kind of coming down in here, there's a page tool that allows you to optimize the page, edit the page settings, change your letter, change your margins and columns, do all that kind of fun stuff. There's a gap tool, there's a content collector tool. So there's a bunch of content tools up here. Not really that common when you're just working by yourself, but if you're working with a larger team of people, you're probably going to want to use something like the content selector tool or content collector tool. But this next group is really where you're going to live most of the time. It's going to be between these 2 mouse cursors and this next group, and that's your text and your line tools and your pen tool in order to create custom shapes, and your pencil tool, not so much for sure, but definitely your frame. We're going to talk about the frame tool a lot today. There's a rectangular, ellipse, and polygon frame tool, and of course it's the same in shapes. So rectangle, ellipse, and polygon tool for shapes. These are drawing shapes on the board that you might, or on the artboard that you might want to work with. The next are things like cuts and transforms and gradients and all that stuff. Kind of more granular editing. And then the bottom section is where you're going to find things like your eyedropper and your zoom tool and your note tool, kind of the extra stuff that you don't necessarily need very often. This section I want to highlight a lot, though, is this little area right here. Hopefully you guys can see it okay on my screen. Is it high enough resolution that you can actually tell what's going on? But in here, is that high enough? I can
like, can we see what you're like when you're moving your cursor? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see it at least here. I'm not sure about everyone else.
Trying so the use scroll gesture, enable hover text. Press nope. Okay, zoom style. Use keyboard shortcuts to zoom. There we go. So I can try this. Oh, I can't. How do I go over there? Oh, like that. There we go. So if I kind of zoom in a little bit here, does that work? There we go. Or is that just totally, is that zooming in the video or no? Or did that just go weird?
I didn't.
Nothing changed for you guys?
Nothing for me.
It looks the same.
Yeah, okay. So that's not going to work. Okay, cool. That's fine. I was just going to try to zoom into this corner here, but it's not possible. But that's okay. Something we could do on a projector, but through Teams, it's not as possible, unfortunately. So this is these little buttons right here. This is Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, all those applications. They have what's known as the fill and the stroke, right? So if your buddy Phil and your buddy Stroke, I don't know, the Stroke's not a real name, but anyway, they're always friends. They're always together inside of an application, and it's the fill of an object and the stroke or the border of an object, right? And they always look like this in Adobe applications, and they're good to get used to. So this red line meaning right now that there is no fill and there's a black stroke, and the fill is priority right now. So if I go ahead and draw a rectangle, I'm going to get a rectangle. Even before I let go, I know I'm going to get a rectangle without any fill and a black outline. I can, of course, then double click on either of these to select, right, and change. Okay, if I want to go ahead and select the stroke, double click on the stroke, I can go ahead and change the color of that and it'll change. Or I can go ahead and get rid of the color if I want to as well, right? The big thing about this, there you just have to see the little box, you have to right click, go apply none, and it'll remove the stroke. The big thing about this is just understanding that it's here. And it's also over here in the appearance section, in the appearance panel, if you will. And it says what the fill color is. You can double click that as well. The tool's going to look a little differently. The color tool is going to look different on this side than it does on this side of the screen. So you notice that this side of the screen opened up a color picker with an RGB color space view. If I want to go ahead and work in CMYK instead, it would actually then, of course, flip this over to CMYK and it would work there. I could go ahead and set it in all different color modes. That's what all this means. So this is CMYK, for example. This is the percentage. Remember, zeros being off and 100% being 100% of that color. It's weird to think about it in this way, because if I set them all to 0, for example, I actually get white, right? Because that means I'm not going to add any cyan, magenta, yellow, or black to my print. So therefore, it's going to be white because I'm most likely printing on white paper or a white medium, I should say. Or if I did 100% of these three, I kind of get this almost black, or I could just do 100% of black and I would get black. Or any combination, right? So I can, 50% magenta and kind of grade up a bit and do a 50% and 50% on the M and the K. And I kind of get this, pastel-y rose color, if you will. But anyway, you can go, of course, just kind of move this around. It's going to tell you on the different color spaces what they look like. RGB, that's your monitor color, so red, green, and blue, and so on and so forth. Okay, anyway, so I cancel that for a second. If I open up this one here, what I get is I actually get, by default, I get my swatch picker, which I prefer. I really like the swatch picker. It's right now it ships with the default colors. So default, it's got 100% cyan, 100% magenta, 100% yellow. It's got a calibrated red, a calibrated green, and a calibrated blue for CMYK, right? So it's really nice. And then I got a paper color, which is white, which is the color of your paper because there's no ink going on the paper, or black, right? And that's in brackets as well. So this is kind of a really quick way to kind of select colors. The cool part about this is you can actually add your own swatches by clicking the little plus button, clicking new swatch. You can create your own swatch, and we'll be doing that. So you can actually create your own swatch, any color that you absolutely want. The color tools in this program are so weird like this. And create your own. You can rename it, call it whatever you want. We're gonna talk about all that on how to do that, but I'll just delete that for a second. So don't worry about that. Same thing with stroke color. It's the same thing. There's also, so that's your swatches. There's also your full-on color. Right now it's in black and white. You actually have to come up here and say what color space you want it in. But again, we'll go through all that as we get going. I'm just giving you a real quick high-level preview of everything. We're going to deep dive into all of these functions. And of course, a gradient tool at the very end here. Okay, and this is kind of neat. This is very much like the other one. It just, again, looks different. So it's weird because this application really shows you color choosers in like 5 different ways, and they all do the same thing. They all give you color at the end of the day, but it's the way you work it and where you select it that changes quite a bit. So it's kind of interesting. Awesome. So that's really the left side. The right side is going to change. So this is pretty neat. This is like a smart properties panel. So this will change based on what you have selected, and it'll suggest tools based on what you have selected. So for example, right now, if I have select nothing, if I just click away from everything, it's going to give me some page properties. So I can go ahead and change the width and height of the page and the margins and the bleeding and all that stuff. How many pages that I want, or what page to select, I should say. If I want rulers or not. It's going to basically all that jazz. If I go ahead and select an object like this rectangle that I drew, it's going to go ahead and give me, okay, well, here's the XY position on the page, right? So it's 1.2 inches from the left and 2.5 inches from the top, right? Everything from this corner right here, this top left corner, everything's measured in X and Y from that. It's also going to be the width of it. It's 5.8 and change and 3.6 and change for width and height. Okay, so I can actually come in here and change it specifically. So if I knew I wanted a box that was 2 inches by 2 inches, for example, a square, go ahead and just type that in. That's all I have to do, and it's going to edit this on this side. It gives me my appearance panel. It gives me some align tools, so I can align it to different objects and stuff. And we're going to go through the align tools because they are advanced, but we are going to play around with those. But really quickly, I could say I want to align to page and just left align, right? Or I could say I want a line to the margins and I want a left align to the margin, for example, or a center line to the page this way and this way, right? So there's all these kind of really quick tools in order to move things around so it's perfectly lined up. Text wrapping, this is kind of where you feel more at home with Word. Word automatically defaults to have text wrapping on, so text will wrap around objects. InDesign is the opposite. It actually defaults to text line off, so you can move an object anywhere you want. It won't affect the text. But as soon as you do want to affect the text, then you're going to have to go ahead and click these wrapping buttons and turn text wrapping on. And again, we're going to talk about all that. I feel like I've said that like 8 times, but I just want to stress that is that we are going to talk about all these things individually. So, the other kind of cool stuff that you're going to want to know is definitely the zoom at the bottom here, just being able to kind of zoom in and out really quickly on the document. It's super handy. I actually don't use this very often. What I instead do for zoom is just hold Alt on my keyboard or Option on the Mac keyboard and use my mouse wheel. And you just really quickly zoom in and out using your mouse wheel and Alt or Option, depending on your Mac or Windows. Or your keyboard. Some Mac keyboards say Alt as well. Okay, the other options are if you hit Command or Control on Windows, Command on Mac, you can go Command 0, and it'll put the entire page that you currently have selected in view, or Command 1, which sets it to 100% view and centers on whatever you have selected. So I got the square selected. It's going to center it, move it to the document to that so I can see it. It's going to pan the document, and it's going to zoom that to 100%. So that's really cool. Command 2 is 200%. Okay, that's it. There's no 3 or 4 or anything. Actually, there's a 4, but 3 for some reason does something completely different. It's kind of totally weird. But anyway, the Command 0 and Command 1 are probably really common, especially Command 0. There's also Command Shift 0. That will actually, or Control Shift 0 if you're on Windows, that will actually have multiple pages. It'll zoom out and let me show me everything. And that's the same in Illustrator as well. So if you start getting used to Illustrator, you'll actually be at home with those keyboard shortcuts, which is really nice. A lot of the keyboard shortcuts are actually very similar between InDesign and Illustrator. So I always find that super handy because I definitely spend most of my time in Illustrator and less of my time in InDesign. So when I'm in InDesign, I still feel at home, which is nice. Okay, so with all that, it's a lot of speaking. So I got a square here. I'm going to leave that square just for a second. I actually don't mind it. It's a nice color. What I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and play around with what are known the frame tools. So we have a type tool, we have a frame tool, and we have shape tools. We're all going to create different frames actually at the end of the day. They can be used and created as placeholders, or they can be simply like a color like this. So I can actually put text in this, I can put an image in this, or I can just leave color in it. If I know that it's going to contain an image, I can actually start my composition really quickly. So I can start my layout really quickly by going ahead and doing a bunch of stuff. So I can go ahead, for example, I'm just going to select the type tool right now. And if I right-click on the type tool, I see that I have a type tool and I have a type on a path tool. And I also see what the keyboard shortcuts are for those. So T will always jump me over to a type tool. Again, this is like a rapid, design application. So keyboard shortcuts, if you ever watch a pro use an application like this, they go really fast because they start learning the keyboard shortcuts. So they can just kind of fire through them, right? But anyway, I want to have kind of a text area maybe here on this side. So I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag. That's what I'm going to do. And that gives me a text frame that I can go ahead and put some text in. And I'll just do another one kind of at the bottom here in and around this area. It doesn't have to be exact. Then I'm going to come up and I'm going to grab my rectangle frame tool, which is F on the keyboard. And I'm actually going to draw outside of this area. I'm going to go all the way to this bleed area, click and drag, and create a rectangle at the top. And it's going to actually put an X in it. If it has an X in it, I know it's a frame. So it's an empty frame. So it's ready for something. Okay. If I look back at my flyer example, so I've got this at the top here. I've got a picture here, a picture here, and a picture here. So what we're going to do actually, it actually looks like I've just one big text area. So that's fine. So we're actually going to drop, what was it? A picture here, and in the bottom corner. So we're going to drop a picture. Did it go over the sides? It didn't. Okay. So we're going to draw a picture here, and we'll put a picture down here. And what I'll do is I'll actually remove, I know this is a type area, so I'll actually just delete that on my keyboard and instead resize this one. So I'm just going to select it and just click with my mouse, and I'm going to go ahead and change it so it actually fills the entire space. Perfect. And awesome. So very good. So now I have kind of like this quick frame happening, right? So I have like a box here, placeholder for an image, a placeholder for an image. I got 4 of those for my 4 images, and then I have some text that can just simply go ahead and drop in. So if I go ahead and add some text, for example, I can go ahead and just double click in here and start typing, right? If I was some lorem or whatever it is, you can actually, where do they move it? Placeholder, fill with placeholder text is under type. That's it. So this application actually has under type, if I just double click this so I can see the bouncing cursor here. And if I go to type, I can actually click fill with placeholder text, which is all the way down here. And it'll actually fill with lorem ipsum. And I don't know if we've talked about lorem ipsum in the past, but lorem ipsum is a really common in graphic design, just as filler text or any sort of composition layout. It's just as filler text. It's all Latin. The intent is that it looks close enough to it being a language like English or something like that. It doesn't have any special characters really going on, but it's close enough to that. But then it's not distracting. You're not going to read it or anything, and you can tell as soon as you start looking at it. You know, hey, well, that's not English. I'm not going to read it, right? So unless you can learn Latin, unless you know how to speak Latin, it's not going to distract you from the layout. And that's the intent, right? So realistically, you should design with real content. That's the goal. You should design with the actual text because that's how you're going to want to flow your document and stuff. But if you're doing something like this, you just need something to drop in. You can go ahead and use something like a lorem ipsum, which is nice. Awesome. So far, this looks absolutely horrendous, but that's okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go into, I've got here in this window, I've got my placeholder images, and I'm actually going to just drop them in. So here's my one picture here. Let's see what I got. I got these 3. I got a wide one here. This Satoshi Nagao. It's all from unsplash.com, so these are all free to use. I'm actually just going to drag, check this out. I'm going to drag it over top of this shape here and just let go. And it's going to drop, InDesign's going to drop that image directly into this top header area, as you can see. I'm going to do the following for the next ones. Now, these should be fine if I just go ahead and drop them in. So let's see what we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So maybe we'll put this one here. Put this one here. And if they don't show up or they show up really weird, it's totally fine. I'm going to show you real quick how to fix that. There we go. So I've actually dropped all 4 of them in so far. What InDesign's done is actually submitted them at like 100%. So these images are actually massive. So if I actually double click into this image here, and if I just kind of zoom out for a second, that's the image. I just had to zoom out. That's the entirety of the image. This entire thing, you can see how large this image is, right? So it's really unusable right now as to how big this is. But what I can do is I can really quickly, this frame fitting, I can reuse these to rapidly change the size of this. So I'm going to just show you for a second. I'm going to just deselect everything here. I got nothing selected. I'm going to click on this top area with that image, and I'm just going to double click. As soon as I double click, I know I've double clicked into it because my properties have changed, and I now have a frame fitting section on the side here. So I can actually click on this. This is just fill frame proportionally. So this is just like fit to content as easy as you can. Click that, and it'll actually resize it, as you can see, one of the edges. So it'll resize whatever edge will fit the best. It'll go ahead and resize it. So that usually is going to get you to a point now where it's a lot more useful. You don't have to try to keep resizing it. Just go ahead and use your frame fitting real quick. And now you can actually drag this around, and I'm dragging it around inside of the other shape. And a lot of times this is where students get really lost is they're in this mode where they're kind of editing this image, and they're not, they leave it like this, and they're like, Chris, I don't know how to get this side here. So maybe they'll click on here and they'll be like, wow, why is this over here? And then they'll try doing that and it won't change anything, so then they'll kind of like move it over, and anyway, it just becomes a mess, becomes a headache. So this is one of the parts of InDesign that it's a little trickier. I'm just going to undo for a second, just Command Z on my keyboard, controls that if you're on Windows. But definitely take a moment if you're watching this later and you're following along. Take a moment to really make sure you know what's going on with InDesign here. So as I said, I'm going to deselect everything, so kind of start over for a sec, and click into here. Double click with my keyboard or my mouse. I'm now selecting this image. You can see it's got an orange outline on it. I've got frame fitting on. I can go ahead and do a quick frame fit, which I've already done. And I can drag and move this around. Just, you can see my cursor. Look at my cursor. My cursor is literally a hand. So I know that that's what that's going to do. It's going to try to lock it to a position. But say I want to get, maybe a different part of this image, or maybe I want more like the horizon at the top here. I can move it around to get to that point. I can also zoom it in, right? I can grab these corners and zoom it in. It will actually let me horribly stretch the image. Don't do that. Don't stretch your images. Don't stretch your text. What you want to do is you want to hold shift. Always hold shift, right? So hold shift when you're going to do any sort of resizing, and that'll keep the proportion of the photos. You can see the width and the height are going to change proportionally. So I can go ahead and make it bigger, move it over, whatever I need to do. And there's some more advanced tools here. I can go ahead and Alt Shift on the side. It'll actually proportionally change the whole thing as well, just by holding Alt and Shift, or Option and Shift on the keyboard at the same time. That will go ahead and proportionally resize it from the center, which sometimes is really nice if you just want to kind of zoom in a little bit. But again, just go ahead, play around with it a little bit. When you're resizing something, keep in mind where the cut's going to be. So the cut's going to actually be this black line. That's the edge of the paper, so it's going to be really close to that. So you want to make sure that you avoid what are known as tension points in any sort of, this is just kind of a real quick graphic design aside. You want to make sure you avoid tension points. Tension points would be something like this. Kind of put this photo here. I'm like, wow, it looks really good, right? Zoom in on this left-hand corner for a sec. When I go ahead and print this, when they cut that, there's going to be this like weird triangle shape right here in the corner, and it's going to end up being a tension point for the person looking at this. And I'll actually look at that, and it'll be really weird, especially anytime two points come together kind of unnaturally, or you kind of have this little blank area on the one side that's big enough. It'll actually look really weird. This would actually be much better if I just cut it like this instead. And that way when it cuts, you'll get enough of the information there, hopefully, that it'll look okay. You can check on the other side. Yeah, the other side looks pretty decent. I'm not seeing any tension points. If I had this up here, for example, see that point right there? That would also be a tension point. So that would create a tension point at the top of the document. Because remember, it's going to get cut like here when it prints, right? So if we kind of use this to show you, it's going to get cut like here. So that's going to create kind of this tension point. Your eye's going to want to go to it. You won't really know why. So giving it some breathing room like this will actually alleviate that problem. Kind of give it that breathing space, or making sure you're cutting it better. So anyway, it's kind of just a quick aside on how to do that. Awesome. Let's go ahead and fix these other photos real quick. I'm just going to do a Command-0 on my keyboard, and that's going to zoom me back out so I can see everything. And I'm just going to click this one, do a frame fit, click this one, do a frame fit, click this one, do a frame fit. Awesome. You can leave it like that for now, right? So real quick, I'm just going to reset my images. Of course, I'm going to do a lot more work than just that, but we're going to start basically with that, so which is good. So what I'm going to do next is the other thing that I can do is you can set up columns. So if I kind of come in here and click on my text area, I start seeing a lot of options up here. And we're going to deep dive over the next couple of weeks really into this section. But I have my paragraph styles. I have character styles. We're going to learn all about that. That is just like we did in Word. We did character styles and paragraph styles in Word. It's the same thing in InDesign. Immensely powerful. A little bit of a pain to learn how to set it up, but once you get into it, it's not too bad. Of course, I've got, fill and stroke here. I'm getting fill and stroke actually on the text frame. You have to remember, this is what's selected. See where it says properties text frame? If I go ahead and click up here, properties linked file. So that's what I've selected. Linked file, text frame, right? So this is telling you what you selected. So be mindful of that as you kind of click around. If I click nothing, it's saying no selection, right? So that's going to, InDesign's telling you what you have selected, kind of tell you why it's presenting these options to you. But if I come all the way down to the bottom here, I get my text styling, because this is actually fill. So if I change this fill, for example, to black, it would actually fill the text frame to black, because that's what I've selected right now. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to undo that for a second. But if I come on down here, I do have some type options, which is kind of confusing, but I do have it. So I have some type options here for this entire box. So I can change this to, a font that is nice, like a Lato or something. I think I have Lato installed. Yeah, so I can do like a Lato Light or Lato Thin. There we go. And really quickly, in order to make this a little better, I'm going to probably want to change my font size. So most of the time in like a book or anything like that, your font size is actually 12 is pretty big. So it's usually between 9 and 11. That's usually your font size in a lot of fonts. So I can actually bring this down even to 11. Would probably be okay. And then what I want to do automatically is I need to increase the breathing space on those lines. So I need to increase what's known as the line height. I like a multiplier of about 1.5. So if it's 11, I'm going to multiply that by 1.5, 1.6, around there, to give me kind of a baseline of what I need to be. So I can, of course, go like 11 times 1.5. So like whatever the font size is, I can figure out, okay, well, 16.5. Okay. Well, where am I going to put that? I'm going to put it here. So right now, Illustrator's or InDesign is defaulting to a line height that it's suggesting, but it's always too small. So what I'm going to do is just double click into this and kind of erase everything for a second. Just type in 16.5 and press enter. And that will give me a more comfortable line height on this. If I want to go a little higher than that, I can. That's at 1.5. But I can also do the math in here. This is a really weird power usery thing in InDesign, is you can do math. Illustrator is the same way. You can do math in any of these text boxes. You just can. Why? Who knows? It's pretty cool. So I can actually double click in here, select the whole thing, and literally type in 11 asterisk 1.6, for example, and press enter. And it'll actually calculate 1.6 times 11, which works out to 17.6. So pretty neat. It's pretty weird that you can do that, but you can do math in here. Asterisk is your times, you know, slash is your division, that kind of stuff. You can do all add addition and subtraction as well, all kind of in here, which is pretty neat. If you click on it, there's a bunch of predefined ones, but as you can see, like there's an 18, but I like that multiplier factor. I like to, 1.5, 1.6 times the line height. For line height, usually works out pretty well in most documents. Sometimes even a little higher, 1.8, depending on kind of the readability that you need to create. So absolutely. Now, right off the hop, it's going to go ahead and left align my paragraph. Of course, I have all these other ones I can justify. For example, a lot of print docs are going to be justified. And if I kind of move this image for a sec, I'll show you what that does. It's going to bring, just like anything else, it's going to bring the words, to be justified. That is really how you would lay out a book or anything like that, as you would normally, or a document or anything like that. A lot of times you're going to justify. So we'll leave that justify on. I like that. There's some align tools, of course, for the text box. There's also this. This is the column. These are text frame options here specifically. This is the number of columns. I can actually go ahead and check this out. Go 2, 3, whatever, and I can have the same text. So I don't have to create 3 text boxes to create columns. I can let InDesign do the work for me. So I can go ahead and say, I want 3 columns here, and this is my gutter. I can change my gutter. So how much space is between each column as I kind of flow my document. So if I want to go like 2, for example, and have like a pretty decent sized gutter, I can go ahead and do that. It's going to flow everything for me how I need to. It's got a shortcut to options here. This is going to bring it up and bring up all my options. So my indent spacing and my columns, we're going to play along with that. But I don't need to do that. I'm just going to click cancel. So pretty neat. That's about it. There's a quick action for fill with placeholder text. So if I didn't have any text in here, if I wanted to, there's a little quick actions button for that, which is pretty nice. If I want to change the color of the font, I'm actually going to deselect. I'm going to actually double click inside this and do Command A or Control A. And that's going to give me my fill on this type, because the fill could be different. Like this word might be red, but the rest is black. So I can come in here, and it's just like any other color thing. I can come in here and change the color to whatever I want, shade of gray, or change it to that CMYK color and come up with this very specific color. Say I want like a weird, I don't know, whatever pink color or something. I go ahead and do that. When I'm done doing whatever I need to do, all I got to do is deselect. So deselect, go ahead and grab your selection tool, click away, right? And it does that. So I don't know why I'd want it in red. It's kind of weird. I'm just gonna undo that back to black. Till I get back to black. There it is. But that is an option. If you need to bold anything, of course, this is a full text editor. So if I just go ahead and highlight anything, just like in Word, come over here, I can go ahead and change. It's a little bit more advanced. It's not just simple bold. You're actually going to change the font type, font weight directly in here. So I can go say, change it to bold, for example. So that word is bold, right? So I can do that kind of stuff. Now, this is known as column-based layout inside of InDesign, but there's another thing called threading text, and it's a little weird. So you can see down here, see this little plus, this little red plus here. This little red plus is referring to the fact that there's more text. So when I went ahead and filled this, it filled it, but then I increased the line height, right? I decreased the font size, but I increased the line height. I changed the font family. So doing all of that went ahead and it's now blowing out. So it's actually, there's more there than I have room for. So the text, there's more text here. So if I get this little red plus icon, it's actually telling me that there's more to go. So if I were to just go ahead and say I had room on my page, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag another, take a look at this. I'm going to grab that type tool. I'm just going to drag like another font another type box over here, just temporarily, just for fun, pretending that this is on the page. And check this out. I'm going to go ahead and click on here. See that little icon, that plus icon? Right? I want to thread the text from this little red plus to here. And that means that there's overset text. So, oops, if I double click on it, it'll actually create, it's kind of weird. If I double click on it, it'll actually create me kind of another box, but I'm actually going to single click. It's a little weird. Just single click on that little red, make sure it's selected. The text box is selected you want to grab from. Single click on that red plus, and then click into your other text box that you have. And it'll actually now reflow the text over here. And it's cool. This is called threaded text. So if I were to resize this, for example, it's actually going to flow the text that can't fit into this box. So it's going to automatically do that based on all the size. If I make it big enough, it'll get rid of it, that kind of stuff. So this is called threading text, which is pretty important. Okay. Really quickly between paragraph styles and character styles. Paragraph styles, if you remember from Word, is going to affect the entire paragraph. So that's going to create spacing between paragraphs, maybe a background color, maybe I want to format it like a block quote or a pull quote. I'm going to do all that with paragraph styles. Something like character styles would be like bold. What is my bold style going to be? Maybe my bold style is actually going to be, you know, hairline, uppercase, whatever, in red. Or maybe it's going to be, you know, bold text, just simple. Or maybe it's going to be whatever. It's up to you what you want to do. Character styles will set that up for you. That's what you're going to use a character style for. But again, we're going to deep dive that into the future. We'll come back to that. I'll probably come back to that today. Maybe we'll take a break and then come back to that part. But I'm going to keep going. We're going to play around with some more tools real quick. So what we want to do is start playing around with what is known as, I don't want to get too out of order here to make sure that we just cover everything. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, linked files, wrapping text. Yeah, maybe we'll just talk about wrapping text real quick, and then we'll go back to the other ones. So wrapping text is the ability to basically make sure that this text is going to wrap around these. So it's pretty cool. All I got to do is make sure, first of all, that they're both like together, of course. And then I'm going to select my image. So I'm selecting this image here. I'm going to go to the text wrap options. Take a look at this. This says wrap around bounding box. If I click that, it'll actually wrap. It'll actually tell the text, any text that's near it, to go ahead and wrap. And if I resize this, it'll actually do a tight wrap. I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard just to kind of resize the text frame, even though that keeps the image. See how the image, when I resize the text frame, see how the image just gets cropped more? If I don't want to do that, I can actually hold Command and Shift or Control and Shift at the same time when I'm resizing the frame, not the image inside, but the frame. I haven't double clicked. Remember, double clicking, that's going to move the image inside of the frame. I don't want to do that. I want to move the entire frame itself, just the frame, right? So I'm going to do a Command Shift on this corner, and I'm going to bring it down, and it'll actually automatically just resize the whole thing, which is really nice. Shift will lock the proportions, and Command will make sure that the image inside also resizes. So just quickly, if you want to resize it. You can see this is not super useful though, right? So it's wrapping, but see how the text is touching? So it's really not great, right? That's the default. That's just the wraparound bounding box. I have this other one. This is wraparound object shape, and this is going to use a little bit of computer processing to try to figure out, you know, what to wrap around on the inside. So it's found this guy, it's found some shapes in the background, and it's going to do this kind of subject aware. And I can go inks. Actually, that's what I want to do here, and try to wrap it around. I don't necessarily want to do this right now because this image isn't working great for it, but it's kind of a cool feature you can do, but we're not going to do that. So that's what that one is here. Jump object literally just goes above and below it, and then jump text column would actually flip it out. As long as it's an image, it would actually flip it right out. But what I do is I do want this wrap out round bounding box, but I want to click on more options. This little, see this like horizontal ellipsis? So I want to go ahead and click the ellipses here. And what this is doing, this is the padding around it. So right now it's set to 0. Watch this. If I go ahead and click up a little bit, it's locked, so all of them are changing. That's what's creating the padding around the image, is that. So I can go ahead and do it till I'm comfortable there. So I'm going to do that to these other two. Again, making sure that I'm selecting the frame itself and then turning on my text wrapping and making sure that it's matching. So this one is, where is it? Oh, you know what? I messed up for a second. I got the wrong selection tool. Make sure you get your right selection tool. I should have known right away. That's okay. Make sure you get the right one. Now we're good. And go ahead and click this button and just go ahead and pump that up. I think it was 0.125. Nope, 0.875. Yeah, there we go, 1.875. And do the same thing on this one. Just going to go ahead and do this. And right to there. Perfect. So now they're all wrapped properly. So I can actually take these and kind of move them around a little bit, kind of resize them. Remember that Command-Shift trick or Control-Shift trick? As you can see, these are just going off the side a little bit from the text, but that's fine. Kind of move them around. As you can see, the text will just reflow around them. Everything but the square in the background, which has just kind of been there the whole time. It's been in my way, but that's okay. We're going to play around with that later. So that's really cool. So that's literally the way we're going to wrap around it. Now, what's cool about this is like a full-on wrap. So if I were to go ahead and grab my direct selection tool instead, I can actually edit the shapes. So this shape, for example, here, see when I mouse over this? See when I first mouse over to this, I kind of get this orange shape, and it's showing me where the original image is inside. I'm going to go along the blue here instead, along the corner, and I'm going to click right in the very corner. When the very corner comes up, I actually get a little square, a little hollow square, right to the bottom right-hand side of my cursor. And I'm going to click on, actually I don't want that corner, I want this corner here. I'm going to click on that corner here, and once it's selected, that little corner will become filled, and the other ones are still blank. It's really hard to see, but that's what we do. And then what's cool about this is I can then grab this and shape it. So I can move it around. As you can see, what happens is it moves around, and we can fix this in just a second. It moves around the shape on the inside. I'm kind of can grab the different corners and make this kind of some weird shape, for example, just to kind of be fun with it. Maybe I want to do something like this, right? Is this kind of weird looking shape? But say I want to wrap the text directly around this really weird shape. What I want to do now is this other line that's going around it is the wrap line. So I'm actually going to click on the corner of that and then bring that in where I want the wrap to be on the text. And I can actually adjust that shape as well. And now it's going to actually adjust the wrapping. Now, this would even be more pronounced if I go ahead and click back on this. I'm going to go back to my normal selection tool, click on this text frame, and then change it to one column. You'd really see kind of how things are flowing around the document, which is really cool. And you can also see what doesn't fit, which is neat. But as you can see in this other example, that's what we did here. It's kind of created this cool shape down here in order to kind of just kind of play around, see what's going on. I can go ahead again. You don't want to, with that direct selection tool, you want to make sure you select the right shape. You're going to click right on the inside blue, and then that way you can actually change your wrap area, right? So you can kind of edit your wrap area. Maybe I want this a little bit more extreme. Maybe I want something like this, for example. Right, and I can do some micro adjustments too to make sure that the words are flowing really nicely and everything looks the way it should. And now it's feeling like something a little bit more of an advanced layout as it's kind of a wrapping around it. So the tools in InDesign for text wrap are really, really cool. You can wrap right around shapes. You can wrap around absolutely anything, which is really cool. Or you can just do a basic wrap and go ahead and set your wrap options this way, which is cool. You can see what's happened now, though, is I've gone ahead and done that, but now I have this kind of blank area here at the top. I'm going to double click into this. It's just because the image is where it's placed. So I'm going to actually move the image inside the frame. Just kind of resize it a bit, holding shift until I get that crop that I want, just like I did at that top one. So kind of edit it until I get it so it doesn't have anything blank there. There we go. That's kind of cool. In fact, what I might want to do is, if I was sending this to print, it might actually look really cool to can grab the right tool, grab that direct selection tool, click on the edge here. And what if it would look like if this actually came all the way to the edge here? Right, what would that look like? That could be kind of cool. And then grab this shape, right, make it bigger on the inside here. And I've screwed up. I actually got to get this to the edge. So I actually have to do that again. Direct selection tool. If you're having problems here, just always click away and then click back with the right tool. That always helps a lot. You know, if things are starting to go weird, just undo and start over from no selection. I'm just going to get this into the bleed area. There we go. Cool. So that's starting to look kind of neat. Just the way that kind of goes off the side, it kind of matches the way the top is. So things are kind of looking cool. You know, maybe this shape's really weird. I want to crop her a little bit differently. Maybe I want her more, you know, trying to think about like a thirds in this picture here a little bit. Real thirds a little bit when I crop things. Okay, same with this image. This is a really cool image, but yeah, maybe I'll leave that one here. Maybe I'll bring it up a little bit just so this part of the image kind of matches my text at the top here. There we go. Awesome. And sometimes you just need that little fine tuning. You can use your keyboard keys, your arrow keys in your keyboard, and you can fine tune positioning as well, right? So every time you click, every time you just press one of the arrow buttons, you're moving in increments of 1. If we hold shift and type and do it, you're going to move in increments of 10. So shift will convert it to 10 automatically while you're using your keyboard keys. So again, just little tricks like that kind of just help you format something really quick. So say I get to a point like this and I'm like, okay, things are looking kind of cool. Like, so, this blue square looks terrible, but hold on a second. And I'm like, what would this look like? Like right now I got a lot of stuff going on. I want to see what this is going to look like before I print it. What I'm going to do is go up to view at the top and click on, I think it's overprint preview. There it goes. Nope, that's not it. Overprint preview is just going to cut the side on. Screen mode, preview, that's it. So I'm going to go view, screen mode, and preview. And what preview will do is it'll hide everything. I can still actually edit in this mode, but it's going to hide everything. It's going to hide all the bleed areas. It's going to hide everything that I don't need. And I can come in here and start seeing like, well, actually this doesn't match at all. Like the way the border works up here, like that doesn't match. So I don't like that at all. So I'm going to come in here, and this is in a bad position. Now that I can see it without, any lines around it, like that's looking really weird. In fact, this whole shape looks really weird now that I can see it like in this mode. Maybe I actually, want to bring over this image a little bit, kind of zoom in and just get him. How would that look? Just get the guy on the skateboard, right? Anyway. Whatever, right? Maybe put him up here. Position him how you want. So anyways, you can really kind of see at this point, you can really kind of see how things are starting to look all together. And of course, maybe I want to get rid of this box. Now, if I look at this, if I kind of go back for a sec to the normal screen mode, kind of bring it back to see the edits that I made. I can't select this square, right? So this square is back here. It's behind everything. I can't select it. And this happens to students all the time, is that they get to this point where like, well, I can't select it. You have a bunch of options. One of the things you can do is select the object that you can select and then right click and go down to select and go next object below, right? So again, click on what you can over top of it, right click, select next object below. And that will most likely get you to where you need to be, right? And at that point, you can go ahead and use your keyboard keys, whatever you need to do, move it around, delete it, whatever, move it somewhere else, that's fine. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is I can rearrange some stuff. So I can go ahead and say, I want to select this box. So I'm going to right click on this text and I'm going to rearrange it. So I'm going to go to arrange and I'm going to go send backward. So there's keyboard shortcuts for this, as there is everything. The left and right square brackets on your keyboard. If you're on Windows, it's going to be Control, left square brackets going down, right square brackets going up. And on Mac, it's just Command instead. So it's Command left square bracket, Command right square bracket. So I could go ahead and send backward just by doing that Command left square bracket. So I can go ahead and hit this and go until I can click it. And now it's on top. I can see it. I can go ahead and move it around. I can click it, whatever I need to do. Maybe I want it as like this cool little shape or something that's just going to sit down here for no reason. I don't know why. Right? So anyway, you can do that kind of stuff. Or maybe it's going to come off the bottom of the page and it's a cool little formatting tab kind of at the bottom. However you want to do that, right? So really simply, like that's how you would go ahead and edit your, select something that you can't normally select. Of course, there's lots of other options I could do. So even selecting on, this text box here, I can actually, you know, I can convert the shape to, for example, a rounded rectangle and round the corners of it really quickly. I can go ahead and convert it to an ellipse. I can convert it to a triangle. So like everything's here. Nothing is locked in. Everything is always ready to edit, always ready to rock. I'm just going to undo those real quick. But it's really easy to just go ahead and make those changes as you need to. Right, which is good. We're going to play with more shape tools in the future, but I just kind of wanted to get you the basic of the way there. So what I want to do now is, it's 1:38. Let's go ahead. Let's take 10 minutes just to kind of stretch our legs and stuff as we kind of get into the second half of InDesign today. Perfect. It is recording. It's saying it's recording. I'm going to stop recording, and then we'll re-pick it up after, and we'll break this up a little bit this semester. Instead of one big 4-hour video or 3-hour video, we're going to try breaking it up and maybe labeling it and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and click stop recording. And this will also